What do you guys think they're talking about? Gods of the dirt? Dumb jock boyfriends? Who gives a shit? Crystal, enough with the fucking singing. Okay, you're driving us nuts.
I wasn't singing, I was humming.
Cool. Fucking stop.
In 1996, a high school girls soccer team from Muskeg High School was on their way to nationals. Unfortunately, this flight was never destined to actually make it. The flight path had left the plane veering off course about 600 miles north, and everyone on that plane was presumed lost or dead. Survivors of the crash were out there for around 19 months, and upon their rescue, their numbers had dwindled a lot less than to those who had entered onto the plane that day. Who were the members of the Yellowjackets soccer team that got stranded out there in the wilderness? What was their story, and what was their role to play in the girls' survival out there? In this series of videos, I hope to break down each one of the Yellowjackets soccer team that has had a bit of a narrative element or enough context to piece together what their story could actually be. As well as, if their character is still around by the time of shooting this, I will be predicting where their character could go. That being said, hello wilderness survivors, fellow mudbeards, and Yellowjackets if you're watching. And we're officially starting off on my new series of videos hoping to break down each one of the Yellowjackets. I'm going to be trying to release these leading up to Season 3 finale, but there's a chance that it will actually go past that point. Either way, I'm really interested in diving into each one of these characters and kind of putting my own thoughts onto video form. But I'm sure there'll be many things I missed, so if you know any interesting facts or trivia about some of the characters or actors playing them, then feel free to let me know down in the comments. Either way, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it.
Oh, that's great.
Either way, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Today, we're starting off with Jen. Jen is a character who has been within the series since the very second episode of the entire show, maybe even the first. The first 2 seasons of the series, she was played by Mia Lowe, and for Season 3 she had a recast and was now played by Vanessa Prasad. Jen's character is interesting because throughout the first 2 seasons we don't get much context about who she is as a person, but her narrative importance was to kind of show what the girls were thinking as a group that weren't getting as much on-screen time. Her character, as well as Melissa, in Season 1 and 2 helped embody the group of girls as opposed to the characters who were sort of driving the story. This clued us in onto the reactions and what the rest of the girls were actually thinking during these crazy events. See, if they were all just silent background characters, the audience would have a lot more to say about how the characters actually feel about some of these decisions taking place, and what we would do in said situation. However, in Season 2, they started to give the girls more agency and giving them stronger opinions about some of the stuff out there.
If they find her and she's not, I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing that could happen, right?
You mean we could...
Well, I'm not saying I want to. I just, if that's the situation, then...
And visually, throughout the first 2 seasons, Jen and Melissa were very much 2 peas in a pod. Specifically Season 2. It's very obvious through aesthetic context that they were friends. And Season 3 really hammers in on that fact. See, at the beginning of Season 3, a lot of the girls start picking up a lot more roles within the wilderness so they can be more useful. Some of them probably learning from Snacky's mistakes. Point is, Jen is one of the first people revealed to us to have been trained by Natalie to be a hunter. And throughout Season 3, I think she's consistently hunting for the girls when she's not tied into some of the circumstances playing out. And throughout Season 3, a lot of people might have gained some stronger opinions about Jen as a character, considering she's very aggressive with some of our fan favorites. She was very cold to Coach Ben when he was saying he wanted to be looked in the eyes, asking for the same respect that Natalie was given back in Season 2. And Jen, after being reassured by Van, determined that the coach didn't deserve such respect. And as a Coach Ben fan, that pissed me off. Fast forward to when Natalie finally decides to put Coach Ben out of his misery after the girls had kept him in their camp for weeks on end. When the girls found out what Natalie did, they were very upset. See, some of the girls had received visions that Ben was the key to their path home. So even though Natalie was trying to end his suffering, the girls all saw it as a burning of their bridge home. And within their confrontation, Jen ends up shoving Natalie onto the ground. A key thing to note here though, is Jen does this after Melissa blows up at Natalie. And throughout the rest of the story, when we see Melissa getting more outspoken and aggressive, we can see Jen's sort of responses to that. Funnily enough, leading to Jen herself becoming more outspoken and more aggressive. This could potentially clue you into the fact that she really is Melissa's best friend and looks up to her, or maybe has stronger feelings for her as a whole. That being said, their bond is shown so interestingly throughout the show. To point out the obvious, when the girls had come across some of the hikers, during a frantic scuffle, one of the hikers had shot Melissa with a crossbow, and Jen instantly stayed behind to make sure that Melissa was okay, sticking with her throughout the entire night to try to help get this arrow out of her shoulder. She kept herself calm and cool under pressure so she could help her friend, who was obviously not doing very well. This creates a bit of an interesting narrative dynamic because Melissa feels very left behind and abandoned by Shauna, who she is dating at the time. Yet Vanessa, without judging Melissa or putting her down in any way, seems to have Melissa's back fully. Another interesting thing to note is later on, when the girls are trying to figure out how to go find said hikers, they're focusing in on a conversation between Shauna's character. And cinematography-wise, you can see Melissa walked right past Shauna, who's staring at Lottie, and while Shauna is looking at Lottie trying to figure out what to do with her, if you listen in the background, you can actually hear Jen trying to make sure Melissa's okay.
You stay here. Jen, I'm fine. I'm going.
Watch her too.
It doesn't hurt. I can go.
It's stuff like this that reminds us that we really should be paying attention when the group girls have something to say, especially when there's a whole ocean of sounds coming from them. Some of their voices may get drowned out by others, but the words they're saying could have a narrative impact. Also wanted to add real quick that it was interesting that out of all the people, Jen seems the most likely to actually put up a fight against Shauna, outside of Mari. She even said the one thing we were all thinking, why not take the gun back? It's also weird that she said steal it back, considering it wasn't even really stolen from them, it was just kind of handed over, but either way. And while things could go in any direction, I could see potentially Jen's fate being tied directly to Melissa and Shauna's relationship. Either at some point it becomes a romantic triangle, or Jen is just such a homie to Melissa that she finally stands up to Shauna for treating her so shitty. Point is, we did have it confirmed by adult Tai Issa when she was talking in the car with the rest of the girls that Jen and Melissa were both dead. However, interesting thing to know, an episode later, Melissa was confirmed to have actually been alive. So the jury is still out for Jen's survival as a whole. The likelihood is pretty low, but we'll see what the story decides to pull. Either way, Jen's the type of character who throughout the seasons has slowly carved out a name for herself amongst the Yellowjackets, and it's interesting to see where they'll actually end up going with her character. Considering how aggressive she was towards some fan favorites, I don't assume her fate's gonna be that kind. However, given the context of how nice and supportive she is towards Melissa, maybe there will be more leeway with her character. With that being said, that is the official breakdown of Jen. If there's anything I didn't catch or any trivia you want to lay down, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Either way, thank you all for watching, and remember, Jen may be a goon, but at least she's a homie.